He thought I was just another girl he could use. But he had no idea I was learning every move he made. I watched him destroy people without blinking until I became his next mistake. What he didn't know, I was building something behind his back. And when the truth came out, it didn't just break him, it ended him. The first time I met Daniel Hayes, it felt like walking into a storm disguised as sunlight. It was late October, the kind where the air turns sharp but the city still smells like warm coffee and rain-soaked pavement. I had just started working at a boutique marketing firm tucked between a failing bookstore and a too-expensive wine bar. The office smelled faintly of vanilla candles and desperation, startups trying to look successful before they actually were. And Daniel, he didn't belong there. He walked in like he owned every inch of oxygen in the room. Tailored charcoal suit, expensive watch that caught the light, just enough to be noticed. But it wasn't the money, it was the confidence. The kind that makes you feel seen and invisible at the same time. "Emma Carter?" he asked, scanning the room until his eyes locked onto mine. I remember freezing. Because when someone like him looks at you like that, it doesn't feel like attention. It feels like selection. At the time, I needed him more than I understood. My life was hanging by threads no one could see. Rent overdue. My mother's hospital bills stacking like a silent threat. My younger brother calling every other night pretending everything was fine, but I could hear the cracks in his voice. I wasn't just working. I was surviving. So when Daniel offered me a private consulting opportunity, I didn't ask enough questions. That was my first mistake. His office was nothing like ours. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the kind of view that made people believe in success, even if they didn't deserve it. Dark wood, leather chairs, everything precise, controlled, just like him. "I need someone smart," he said, leaning back in his chair, studying me like I was a problem he intended to solve. "Someone who understands people." "And what exactly does that mean?" I asked carefully. A small smile tugged at his lips. "It means I need someone who can help me win." That should have been my second mistake, how vague he was. But instead, I leaned forward. "And what do I get out of it?" He didn't hesitate. "Everything you're currently struggling to keep." The words hit harder than they should have, because somehow he knew. Over the next few weeks, Daniel slowly revealed what helping him would meant. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a strategist, a manipulator, a man who built empires not by creating, but by taking. Competitors, partnerships, relationships, everything was a game to him. And he needed someone who could read people, predict reactions, and subtly influence outcomes. That someone became me. At first, it felt harmless, drafting emails designed to pressure investors, coaching him on how to present himself differently to different clients, sitting in meetings where I watched him dismantle people piece by piece, with a smile. And every time I hesitated, I reminded myself why I was there. Mom's treatments, bills, survival. But slowly something shifted, because Daniel didn't just use my skills. He studied me, the way I spoke, the way I reacted, the way my voice softened when I talked about family. "You're too honest," he said one night, pouring himself a drink while I reviewed notes across his desk. "And that's a problem," I replied. "It's a weakness," he said simply. "Honest people expect honesty in return." I looked up at him then. "And you don't." He smiled. "I expect results." That was the moment I realized something dangerous. Daniel didn't believe in people. He believed in leverage. And I was becoming his favorite tool. Weeks turned into months. My life improved on the surface. Bills paid, better apartment, stability. But inside, I was changing. I started noticing things I never had before. The hesitation in a client's voice before Daniel closed a deal. The way his competitors always seemed to trust him right before losing everything. The subtle lies he told. Not big enough to catch, but sharp enough to cut. And the worst part, I started understanding him. One night, after a particularly brutal meeting where Daniel had crushed a small startup's last chance at funding, I couldn't stay silent. "They trusted you," I said, standing in his office as the city lights flickered behind him. "They were naive," he corrected calmly. "You ruined them." "I outplayed them." I felt something twist inside my chest. "That's not the same thing." "It is," he said, stepping closer, his voice dropping slightly. "You just haven't accepted it yet." I shook my head. "No, I still believe there's a line. He studied me for a long moment. Then he said something that would stay with me forever. Everyone has a line, Emma. Until life shows them how much it costs to keep it. That night I didn't sleep. Because deep down, I knew he was right. And I hated that I was starting to understand why. But what I didn't know yet was that Daniel wasn't just using me for business. He was setting something up. Something bigger. And I was right in the center of it. It started with a woman named Victoria Lang. Powerful. Untouchable. The kind of woman people whispered about but never crossed. She's the key, Daniel said one evening, sliding a file across the table toward me. I opened it slowly. Photos. Financial records. Personal details. Too personal. You want me to what exactly? I asked, my voice tight. I want you to get close to her. I looked up sharply. Why me? Because, he said, his eyes locking onto mine. You're the only one who still looks real. The word sent a chill down my spine. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. He hadn't just chosen me because I needed him. He chose me because I was believable, trustworthy, disposable. And just like that, the game changed. That night, standing alone in my apartment, staring at the city below, I finally asked myself the question I had been avoiding for months. Was I still using him? Or had he been using me all along? But the truth, the real truth, I wasn't ready to face it yet, because I still thought I was in control. I still thought I could walk away whenever I wanted. I still believed I was different from him. I had no idea that I was already becoming exactly what he needed. The first time I saw Victoria Lang in person, I understood why people feared her. Not because she was loud, not because she demanded attention, but because she didn't need to. The charity gala was held in one of the most luxurious hotels in the city, crystal chandeliers dripping like frozen rain, golden light reflecting off polished marble floors, and the faint scent of expensive perfume blending with aged wine. Everything about the place whispered power. And Victoria, she owned it. She stood near the center of the room, dressed in a deep emerald gown that hugged her frame like it had been designed for her alone. Her posture was effortless, her expression calm, her eyes scanning the room not like a guest, but like a judge deciding who mattered. She didn't speak much, but when she did, people listened. Remember, Daniel's voice echoed in my mind from earlier that evening. Don't try to impress her. I had frowned. Then what do I do? Make her believe you're not trying. So I didn't approach her immediately. I waited, watched, learned. I noticed how she tilted her head slightly when someone lied, how her smile never fully reached her eyes unless she was genuinely amused, how she subtly tested people, small questions, harmless on the surface, but designed to expose weakness. She wasn't just powerful. She was careful. And then she noticed me. It happened in a moment, so brief most people wouldn't have caught it. Her eyes paused on me, just for a second, but it was enough, because I felt it, that quiet shift. I had been seen. Enjoying the evening, her voice came from behind me, smooth and controlled. I turned, forcing myself not to react too quickly. Victoria Lang stood there, closer than I expected. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Not because of her appearance, but because of her presence. It was steady, calculated, like nothing ever surprised her. Trying to, I replied lightly. These events aren't really my thing. A small, almost invisible smile touched her lips. Yet you came. Work, I said simply. And curiosity. Her eyes sharpened slightly. Curiosity about what? I met her gaze. People like you. Silence. A dangerous answer. But I didn't look away. For a moment, I thought I had pushed too far. Then she laughed. Soft. Genuine. Interesting. People like me, she repeated. And what exactly do you think I am? I hesitated, just enough to make it feel real. Someone who doesn't waste time. Her expression changed again. Not softer, not warmer, but intrigued. That was the moment I got in. Over the next few weeks, I became part of her world. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Coffee meetings turned into private lunches. Casual conversations shifted into deeper discussions. She asked about my life, carefully, like she was collecting pieces of a puzzle she hadn't decided to solve yet. And I gave her just enough truth to make the lies believable. But something unexpected happened. I started to respect her. Victoria wasn't like Daniel. She didn't manipulate for sport. She didn't destroy just because she could. Everything she did had purpose, precision, control. She built things, protected them, and anyone who threatened that didn't last long. "You're different," she told me one afternoon as we sat in her office overlooking the skyline. The room was quieter than Daniel's, less cold, still powerful, but not suffocating. "Different how?" I asked. She studied me carefully. "You listen more than you speak. That's rare." I smiled faintly. "Or maybe I just don't trust easily." That earned me a look, a real one. "Good," she said. "You shouldn't." And that's when things started to get complicated. Because for the first time, I wasn't just playing a role. I was connecting. Meanwhile, Daniel was watching. "You're getting close," he said one night as I updated him in his office. His tone was calm, but his eyes were sharp. "Closer than expected," I replied. He nodded slowly. "Good. That means it's time." My stomach tightened. "Time for what?" He walked toward me, placing a file in front of me. "Her company is vulnerable right now. There's a deal she's about to sign, one that could either double her empire or destroy it." I didn't touch the file. "And you want me to influence her decision?" The room felt colder. "You want me to sabotage her?" "I want you to guide her," he corrected smoothly. "That's not the same thing." "It is," he said, echoing his earlier words. "Depending on who wins." I stared at him. For the first time, really stared. And something inside me shifted. Because suddenly I saw it clearly. This wasn't business. This was personal. "Why her?" I asked quietly. A pause. Just a fraction too long. Then he smiled. "Because she's in the way." But I didn't believe him. Not fully. And that's when doubt began to grow. Not loud. Not obvious. But steady. Because the more time I spent with Victoria, the harder it became to see her as a target. One evening, as we sat on her balcony overlooking the city lights, she said something that caught me off guard. "Do you ever feel like people only see what they can use?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual. I froze for a second, because the question hit too close. "Sometimes," I admitted. She nodded slightly. "I've spent my entire life building something that no one can take from me." "And did it work?" I asked. She looked out at the skyline. "For the most part." A pause. Then softer. "But it gets lonely." That was the moment everything changed. Because for the first time, I saw her not as a target, not as a powerful woman, but as a human being. And suddenly, this wasn't just a job anymore. That night, I went home with a weight in my chest I couldn't ignore. Because now there were two truths fighting inside me. Daniel gave me everything I needed to survive. Victoria trusted me, and I was standing right between them. But the real problem? I didn't know who I was anymore. A few days later, everything escalated. Victoria called me into her office unexpectedly. Her expression was different. Tighter. Controlled, but barely. "We need to talk," she said. Something was wrong. I could feel it instantly. "What happened?" She slid a document across the desk. I looked down, and my heart nearly stopped. It was the deal. The same deal Daniel had mentioned. But there was something else. Something hidden in the fine print. Something dangerous. "You've seen this before," she said quietly. It wasn't a question. It was a test. My pulse raced. Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Daniel hadn't just sent me to influence her. He had already set the trap. And now, I was part of it. I looked up slowly. Victoria's eyes were locked onto mine. Sharp. Searching. "Emma," she said softly. "Is there something you want to tell me?" Silence filled the room. Heavy. Unforgiving. Because whatever I said next would decide everything. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't know which side I was on. "Emma, is there something you want to tell me?" Victoria's voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be. Because in that moment, it felt like the entire room had closed in around me. I could hear my heartbeat, feel it in my throat. My hands were still, resting on the edge of her desk. But inside, everything was shaking. Because this was the moment. The moment where lies stop being protection and start becoming traps. I looked down at the document again. Every word on that page suddenly felt heavier. Because now I could see it clearly. The hidden clause, the delayed trigger, The kind of legal trap that doesn't destroy immediately, but guarantees collapse later. Daniel didn't just want to beat her. He wanted to erase her. "You've seen this before," Victoria repeated, her tone calmer now but sharper. She wasn't guessing anymore. She was watching, waiting, and I realized something terrifying. She already knew. Not everything, but enough. The question wasn't whether I would lie. The question was how convincing it would be. "I've seen deals like this before," I said carefully, lifting my gaze to meet hers. Not a full lie, not the truth either. Her eyes didn't move, didn't soften, didn't blink. "Like this one?" she asked quietly. Silence stretched, long enough to hurt, and then she leaned back in her chair. Not aggressively, not dramatically, just controlled. "That's disappointing," she said. The words hit harder than anger ever could. "I don't know what you think," I started, but she raised her hand slightly. Not to stop me, to dismiss the effort. "Emma," she said softly, "I didn't build everything I have by trusting instincts alone." A pause. Then, "I verify." My stomach dropped. She reached for her tablet, tapped the screen once, then turned it toward me. Emails, call logs, meeting records, and then my name, connected to Daniel. Not directly, not obvious, but enough. Enough for someone like her. "You're careful," she continued, almost thoughtfully. "I'll give you that. You never lied outright. You never pushed too hard. You made everything feel natural." Her eyes lifted to mine again. Cold now. Not angry. Worse. Certain. "But you forgot something." My throat felt dry. "What?" She stood up slowly, walking around the desk until she was standing just a few steps away from me. Close enough that I could feel the shift in her presence. People who've been used before recognize the pattern. That sentence, it broke something inside me. Because suddenly, this wasn't about business anymore. It wasn't about deals, or power, or strategy. It was about betrayal. "I didn't want to believe it," she admitted quietly. "Because for a moment, I thought you were different." Guilt hit harder than fear. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't want to lie anymore. "I didn't plan this," I said, my voice lower now. Honest. Raw. "Not like this." She didn't respond. So I continued. "I needed the job. I needed the money. And Daniel, he knew that. He offered me something I couldn't refuse." A bitter breath left my lips. And then it just kept going. Her expression didn't change. But I saw it. That tiny shift. That flicker of something human behind the control. "And now?" she asked. The question wasn't simple. It wasn't about the deal. It was about me. And for the first time, I didn't have a rehearsed answer. "I don't know," I admitted. Silence. Then she nodded slowly, as if that confirmed something she already suspected. "You should go," she said. The words landed like a quiet execution. "Victoria, don't," she cut in, her voice still calm, but final. "Whatever you think you're feeling right now, it doesn't change what you did." And she was right, because no matter how complicated it felt, the truth was simple. I betrayed her. I don't remember how I left the building, or how I got home. Everything felt distant, muted, like I was watching my own life from the outside. But one thing was clear. I couldn't go back. Not to her. And suddenly, not to him either. Because now I understood something I hadn't before. Daniel didn't just use people. He burned them. And I had just outlived my usefulness. "Rough day." His voice came from behind me as I stepped into his office later that night. Like he already knew. Like he had been waiting. "It's done," I said quietly. A pause. Then, "Is it?" he asked. I turned to face him. And for the first time, I didn't see confidence. I saw calculation. "She knows," I said. Silence. Then he smiled. Not surprised. Not worried. Just amused. "Of course she does," he said. My chest tightened. "You knew." "I expected it," he corrected, pouring himself a drink like we were discussing something trivial. "Victoria isn't stupid." Anger flared. "You set me up." He tilted his head slightly. "No," he said calmly. "I used the situation. That's the same thing." "Not really," he replied, taking a slow sip. "You were always temporary, Emma. This was never your endgame." The words hit like a slap. So what was I? I demanded. He looked at me then. Really looked. A door, he said simply. Something inside me snapped. A door. I repeated, my voice shaking. You got me access, he continued unfazed. You built trust. You created proximity. That's all I needed. And now, he set his glass down. Slowly, deliberately. Now the real move happens. A chill ran down my spine. What did you do? I asked. But deep down, I already knew. The next morning, everything exploded. News alerts, emails, calls. Victoria's company, under investigation. Major financial irregularities. Frozen accounts. Partnerships collapsing overnight. The deal had gone through, exactly as Daniel planned. But worse than that, evidence had surfaced. Evidence that pointed directly to internal manipulation. To her. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Because this wasn't just sabotage. This was destruction. Complete. Calculated. Irreversible. And somehow, I was part of it. That's when it hit me. The truth I had been avoiding since the beginning. I thought I was playing his game. But I wasn't. I was the game. And for the first time, I stopped feeling guilty. Because guilt means you still believe you had a choice. But this was something else. This was survival. And if Daniel Hayes thought he could use me, break me, and walk away untouched, then he didn't know me at all. I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts, and stopped at one name. Victoria. My thumb hovered over the screen. Because I knew, once I made this call, there was no going back. Not to who I was, not to the life I had. This wasn't about fixing anything anymore. This was about something else. Something darker. Something final. He used me, I whispered to myself. Then slowly, a cold, unfamiliar smile touched my lips. But I learned from the best. The phone rang longer than I expected. Each second stretched, heavy with everything I had done and everything I was about to do. Then, why are you calling me, Emma? Victoria's voice came through, calm, controlled, but colder than I had ever heard it. No warmth, no curiosity, just distance. I know what he did, I said quietly. A pause. Not surprise, not shock, just silence. And now you want to fix it? She asked. There it was, that sharp edge, that disbelief. No, I replied, my voice steady now. I want to finish it. Another silence. But this one felt different. Heavier. Interested. You have 30 seconds, she said. I took a breath. This wasn't just about the deal. He planted evidence, layered, precise, designed to point back at you. Offshore trails, delayed transactions, internal approvals that look real but aren't. I closed my eyes for a second, forcing the words out. I didn't see all of it before. But I do now. And why? She interrupted. Would you help me after everything? Because I wasn't helping her. Not really. Because if he wins, I said slowly, no one is safe. A beat. And because I know how he thinks. That part was the truth. Minutes later, I was back in her office. The same office where everything had broken. But now it felt different. The air was tighter, sharper, like something dangerous was about to happen. Victoria stood by the window, arms crossed, the city reflecting in the glass behind her. She didn't turn when I entered. Talk, she said. So I did. Everything. Not just what Daniel planned, but how he planned. The patterns, the timing, the way he built traps that didn't look like traps until it was too late. He doesn't attack directly, I explained. He builds pressure from the outside, makes it look like collapse is happening naturally. By the time anyone notices, it's already over. And you were part of that, she said. Not a question. Yes, I answered. No excuses. No defense. Silence filled the room again. Then slowly, she turned. Why should I trust you now? The most important question. You shouldn't, I said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. But you can use me, I continued. The same way he did. A flicker. Small. But there. Explain. I stepped closer, placing the file I had brought onto her desk. New documents. New evidence. Pieces Daniel didn't know I had. Daniel thinks this is over, I said. He thinks you're finished. That's his weakness. And yours, she asked quietly. I met her gaze. I don't have anything left to lose. That was what changed everything. The plan didn't happen overnight. It couldn't, because unlike Daniel, we weren't just trying to destroy, we were trying to expose, and that required patience, precision, control. For the next 2 weeks, I became someone new. Not the girl who needed saving, not the assistant following instructions, but not Daniel either. Something in between. I went back to him. "You came back," Daniel said, a hint of amusement in his voice as I walked into his office like nothing had changed. "Where else would I go?" I replied. A lie, but a perfect one, because he believed it. "I told you," he said, stepping closer. "Everyone comes back when they realize what they're worth." I smiled faintly, and for the first time, it felt fake. "Teach me," I said. That caught his attention. "Teach you what?" "How to win like you." Silence. Then, a slow, satisfied smile. And just like that, he let me in again. But this time, I wasn't learning. I was watching. Days turned into a dangerous routine. I sat in meetings, listened to strategies, watched him build his next moves. And every night, I reported everything to Victoria. Every detail, every shift, every weakness. "He's planning something bigger," I told her one evening. "He always is," she replied. "No," I said, shaking my head. "This is different." And it was, because Daniel wasn't stopping. He was expanding. New targets, new deals, new traps. He wasn't just playing the game anymore. He thought he had already won. And that's when people make mistakes. The final piece came unexpectedly. Late one night, as I sat in Daniel's office reviewing documents, I found something I wasn't supposed to see. A hidden account, not in his name, not directly connected, but familiar. Too familiar. Because the structure, the layering, I had helped design it, but this one was different. This wasn't for business. This was personal. And suddenly, everything clicked. Victoria wasn't just a target. She was revenge. The next day, I confronted him. "Why her?" I asked, standing in front of his desk. He didn't look surprised. "Still thinking about that," he said casually. "Yes." A pause. Then he leaned back in his chair, studying me. "Because she did it first." My breath caught. "What?" "She destroyed someone I cared about," he said, his tone quieter now but darker. "Years ago. Business deal. Same kind of move. That changed everything. This wasn't just strategy. This was history. War. And suddenly, I wasn't just caught between two powerful people. I was standing in the middle of something much bigger. Something that had started long before me. That night, I met Victoria again. "He's not just after your company," I told her. She didn't react. But I saw it. That slight tension. "He thinks you destroyed someone close to him," I continued. Silence. Then, "Maybe I did," she said calmly. That answer. It wasn't denial. And that made it worse. "So what now?" I asked. She looked at me. Really looked this time. And for the first time since all of this began, there was something different in her eyes. Not anger. Not distrust. Respect. "We end it," she said. The plan was simple, which made it dangerous. We wouldn't attack Daniel. We would let him expose himself. Publicly. Completely. Irreversibly. All we needed was the right moment. And Daniel was about to give it to us. The night of his biggest deal. The one that would make him untouchable. Or destroy him. As I stood in front of the mirror that evening, dressed perfectly for the role, I barely recognized myself. Not the girl who walked into his office months ago. Not the one who needed saving. This version of me was colder, sharper, stronger, and maybe a little dangerous. "He used me," I whispered, staring at my reflection. Then slowly, a quiet, determined smile appeared. But I learned how to use him better. The night Daniel Hayes believed he would become untouchable was the night everything began to fall apart. The venue was nothing short of perfection. A private rooftop overlooking the entire city, glass walls reflecting golden lights, the low hum of expensive conversations blending with the soft clinking of champagne glasses. The air carried that familiar scent, money, ambition, and quiet arrogance. Daniel stood at the center of it all, confident, composed, victorious, and I stood beside him, exactly where he wanted me. "You look different tonight," he murmured, his eyes scanning my face like he was trying to read something beneath the surface. I smiled. Soft. Controlled. Maybe I finally learned from the best. He liked that answer. Of course he did, because Daniel never doubted himself. And that was always going to be his biggest mistake. Across the room, I spotted Victoria, elegant as ever, unshaken on the outside. But tonight, there was something else in her presence. Not just control. Expectation. This was it. Everything is ready. Daniel asked quietly, his voice low enough that only I could hear. I nodded. Exactly how you planned. Another lie. Another perfect one. Because tonight wasn't his plan anymore. The deal began like every other powerful moment in his life. Controlled introductions. Calculated conversations. Investors drawn in like moths to a flame. Daniel spoke with precision, laying out the opportunity like it was inevitable success. His confidence wasn't just convincing. It was contagious. And slowly, everyone in that room leaned toward him, including the people who would destroy him. I moved through the crowd carefully, my pulse steady but sharp. Every step mattered. Every second counted. Because timing was everything. When Daniel finally stepped forward to close the deal, the room quieted. All eyes on him. This partnership, he began, his voice smooth, commanding, represents not just growth, but dominance in a market that rewards only the bold. I watched him closely, the way he held himself, the way he believed, truly believed, that he had already won. And for a second, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Because he never saw it coming. Before we proceed, a voice cut through the room. Calm. Clear. Unshakable. Victoria. Every head turned. Daniel's expression didn't change immediately, but I saw it. That tiny flicker in his eyes. What is this? He asked, still composed, but tighter now. Victoria stepped forward, holding a thin folder in her hand. No interruptions, she said evenly. Just clarity. The room shifted. The energy changed. And for the first time that night, Daniel wasn't in control. It's interesting, Victoria continued, her gaze moving across the room, how easily people trust confidence without questioning what's behind it. She placed the folder on the table in front of the investors. Documents. Evidence. Real evidence. I've spent the last few weeks being investigated, she said calmly. Accused. Undermined. Nearly destroyed. A pause. Then. But I believe in facts. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. And facts, she continued, opening the folder, have a way of revealing the truth, no matter how well it's hidden. One by one, the documents were passed around. Whispers began. Confusion. Shock. Because this time, the trail didn't lead to her. It led to him. What is this? Daniel said, his voice sharper now. I stepped forward, and for the first time, I wasn't standing beside him. I was standing against him. Your system, I said quietly. Your methods. Your hidden accounts. Your layered transactions. His eyes snapped to mine, and in that moment, everything changed. Because he understood, not everything, but enough. You, he said slowly. Not anger. Not yet. Just realization. You taught me well. I continued, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. The room felt silent now. Heavy. I just paid attention. What did you do? He asked, his voice dangerously low. I met his gaze. No fear left. I gave them the full picture. And that was it. The moment everything collapsed. Security moved in. Investors stepped back. Voices rose. Daniel stood still, frozen in a reality he had never prepared for. Because for the first time, he wasn't the one controlling the outcome. This isn't over, he said quietly, his eyes still locked on mine. I believed him, but I didn't care anymore. Maybe not, I replied. Then softer. But you lost. Hours later, the city felt different. Quieter, like something had shifted. I stood alone on a balcony, the cold night air brushing against my skin. Everything was over. Or at least, that part of it was. You could have walked away. Victoria's voice came from behind me. I didn't turn. So could you, I replied. She stepped beside me, looking out at the skyline. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, why did you really do it? She asked. The question lingered, and for the first time, I answered honestly, Because I didn't want to be like him. A pause. And are you? She asked. I thought about it. Everything I had done. Everything I had become. Then slowly, I shook my head. No, I said. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. Because the truth was, I had learned his game, played it better, and won. But winning came with a cost. As I walked away that night, leaving everything behind, I realized something I hadn't before. Daniel used people to build power. Victoria used power to protect what she built. And me, I became something else entirely. Not a victim, not a weapon, but someone who understood both sides and survived them. He used me, I whispered into the cold night air. Then, with a quiet, knowing smile. But I used him better.